Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Official Introduction, Part 2. Obstacle to Finding Gold. One of the most common causes of failure is the habit of quitting when one is overtaken by temporary defeat. This is the quote by Napoleon Hill. Have you liked my previous two videos on Think and Grow Rich? Have you watched them? Have you heard the passages from this extremely inspiring and life-changing book? If not, please watch my two previous videos. First, it was the general introduction into Think and Grow Rich and the story of Napoleon Hill. The second was the part of official introduction, which I called the burning desire. Here in this video, in this recording, you will hear what is the common cause of failure in having one's wishes fulfilled. We will also notice how Mr. Darby and his uncle failed, because they underestimated the value of human mind, and you will see what can be truly transmuted into gold, how to conquer the obstacles. You will also hear and recognize, I think, that you never know what you can learn out of everyday experiences. Gold fever is okay when it is managed in a proper way. One of the most common causes of failure is the habit of quitting when one is overtaken by temporary defeat. Every person is guilty of this mistake at one time or another. An uncle of R.U. Darby was caught by the gold fever in the gold rush days and went west to dig and grow rich. He had never heard that more gold has been mined from the brains of men than has been ever taken from the earth. He staked a claim and went to work with pick and shovel. The going was hard, but his lust for gold was definite. After weeks of labor, he was rewarded by the discovery of the shining ore. He needed machinery to bring the ore to the surface. Quietly, he covered up the mine, retraced his footsteps to his home in Williamsburg, Maryland, told his relatives and a few neighbors of the strike. They got together money for the needed machinery, had it shipped. The uncle and Darby went back to work, the mine. The first car of ore was mined and shipped to a smelter. The returns proved they had one of the richest mines in Colorado. A few more cars of that ore would clear the debts. Then would come the big killing in profits. The first reward is not always the one that we should always stop on. There is usually more gold than we expect. Take it into consideration. Down went the drills, up went the hopes of Darby and Uncle. Then something happened. The vein of gold ore disappeared. They had come to the end of the rainbow and the pot of gold was no longer there. They drilled on, desperately trying to pick up the vein against all, to no avail. Finally they decided to quit. They sold the machinery to a young man for a few $100 and took the train back home. Some young men are dumb, but not this one. He called in a mining engineer to look at the mine and do a little calculating. The engineer advised that the project had failed because the owners were not familiar with fault lines. His calculations showed that the vein would be found just 3 feet from where the Darbys had stopped drilling. That is exactly where it was found. The young man took millions of dollars in ore from the mine because he knew enough to seek expert counsel before giving up. Most of the money which went into the machinery was procured through the efforts of R.U. Darby, who was then a very young man. The money came from his relatives and neighbors because of their faith in him. He paid back every dollar of it, although he was years in doing so. Long afterward, Mr. Darby recouped his loss many times over, when he made the discovery that desire can be transmuted into gold. The discovery came after he went into the business of selling life insurance. Remembering that he lost a huge fortune because he stopped 3 feet from gold, Darby profited by the experience in his chosen work, by the simple method of saying to himself, "I stopped 3 feet from gold, but I will never stop because men say no when I ask them to buy insurance." Darby is one of a small group of fewer than 50 men who sell more than $1 million in life insurance annually. He owes his stickability to the lesson he learned from his quitability in the gold mining business. You know, when defeat overtakes a man, the easiest and most logical thing to do is just to quit. To forget the gold one was striving for. And that is exactly what the majority of men do. I hope you are not that kind of man. Okay, let's back to the lecture. Before success comes in any man's life, he is sure to meet with much temporary defeat and perhaps some failure. When defeat overtakes a man, the easiest and most logical thing to do is to quit. That is exactly what the majority of men do. Shortly after Mr. Darby received his degree from the University of Hard Knocks and had decided to profit by his experience in the gold mining business, he had the good fortune to be present on an occasion that proved to him that no does not necessarily mean no. One afternoon he was helping his uncle green wheat in an old-fashioned mill. The uncle operated a large farm on which a number of colored sharecrop farmers lived. Quietly the door was opened and a small colored child, the daughter of a tenant, walked in and took her place near the door. The uncle looked up, saw the child, and barked at her roughly. "What do you want?" Meekly the child replied, "My mommy say send her 50 cents. "I will not do it," the uncle retorted. "Now you run on home." "Yes, the child replied. But she did not move. The uncle went ahead with his work, so busily engaged that he did not pay enough attention to the child to observe that she did not leave. When he looked up and saw her still standing there, he yelled at her, "I told you to go on home! Now go or I'll take witch to you." The little girl said, "Yes, sir," but she did not budge an inch. The uncle dropped a sack of grain he was about to pour into the mill hopper, picked up a barrel stave, and started toward the child, with an expression on his face that indicated trouble. Darby held his breath. He was certain he was about to witness a murder. He knew his uncle had a fierce temper. He knew that colored children were not supposed to defy white people in that part of the country. When the uncle reached the spot where the child was standing, she quickly stepped forward 1 step, looked up into his eyes, and screamed at the top of her shrill voice, "My mommy's gotta have that 50 cents!" The uncle stopped, looked at her for a minute, then slowly laid the barrel stave on the floor, put his hand in his pocket, took out $half and gave it to her. The child took the money and slowly backed toward the door, never taking her eyes off the man whom she had just conquered. Brilliant story, isn't it? We very often act on autopilot, forget about our true goals, worthy and precious things. This goal that is mentioned here also symbolically. We are also not always aware about the mechanics of materialization, of bringing the gold out of our mind. We often need to be reminded. Let's back to lecture. After she had gone, the uncle sat down on a box and looked out the window into space for more than 10 minutes. He was pondering with awe over the whipping he had just taken. Mr. Darby, too, was doing some thinking. That was the first time in all his experience that he had seen a colored child deliberately master an adult, white person. How did she do it? What happened to his uncle that caused him to lose his fierceness and become as docile as a lamb? What strange power did this child use that made her master over her superior? These and other similar questions flashed into Darby's mind, but he did not find the answer until years later when he told me the story. As we stood there in that musty old mill, Mr. Darby repeated the story of the unusual conquest, and finished by asking, "What can you make of it? What strange power did that child use that so completely whipped my uncle?" Keep your mind alert, and you will observe exactly what strange power came to the rescue of the child. You will catch a glimpse of this power in the next chapter. Somewhere in the book you will find an idea that will quicken your receptive powers and place at your command, for your own benefit, the same irresistible power. The awareness of this power may come to you in the first chapter, or it may flash into your mind in some subsequent chapter. It may come in the form of a single idea, or it may come in the nature of a plan or a purpose. Again, it may cause you to go back into your past experiences of failure or defeat and bring to the surface some lesson by which you can regain all that you lost through defeat. Guys, are you looking for gold in life? Do you treat life as a great mine? What kind of obstacles you find on the way? How you treat these obstacles? Do you hide from them or try to overcome them? How you react? Are you proactive or reactive? I made a video on this topic of being proactive or reactive. You can watch it. What kind of value the gold you are looking for has for you? Are you persistent or maybe you lose it from your side? Are you an ordinary quitter? What are your experiences in striving for gold? Have you understood that true gold lies in human mind? It is a source of wonderful life-changing ideas, but also it can materialize on physical plane.